Hello, friends. You are welcome to Nationhood Podcast. Today, I want to talk about the category of history I describe as fabulous or legendary history. By this term, I refer to historical events or stories that are widespread and taken to be factual, but in fact are only legends or fables. To put it another way, they are popular lies. In this video, I want to address the question of whether Mungo Park discovered River Niger, and the conclusions I have come to might surprise you. Perhaps the most obvious place to start is to ask, did Mungo Park discover the River Niger? The clear answer is no. Long before Mungo Park was born, Africans had been living near the Great River and putting it to different uses. It was a source of economic activity, such as fishing for catch that would be consumed domestically and sold commercially. The river was also used for human transportation and commercial navigation, while farmers and herders used its waters to raise crops and animals. Inside their homes, Africans relied on the Niger for domestic consumption, which at a minimum would include drinking, cooking, and washing. The river also held sociocultural significance. For some African communities, it was a holy being or deity to be worshipped, and for others, it was the centerpiece of certain festivals. In political terms, the Niger was also important, as local chiefs used it to collect tributes from travelers and from other communities, and it likely served as a boundary demarcating different communities. With River Niger playing all of these important roles in African lives and society, it is quite absurd for anyone to suggest that it was Mungo Park who discovered River Niger. So, where did the idea gain traction in the first place? And who was Mungo Park anyway? Mungo Park was a Scottish doctor and adventurer who found fame traveling through West Africa in the late 18th and early 19th centuries. His travels through the region were recorded in a diary that he kept and which was later popularized via a book published in 1799 under the title Travels in the Interior Districts of Africa. This book was an instant bestseller, and that same year, two more editions were published. The next year, 1800, French and German editions of the book were in print. It was that popular in Europe. Park first came to Africa in 1795 as an agent of the African Association, a group of businessmen who were interested in uncovering the secrets of Africa's interior. Now, compared to the rest of the world, not much was known about the inner regions of Africa. So, for Park, in addition to discovering the route of the Niger, he was also expected to investigate what he could about the trading centers of Timbuktu in Mali and Katsina in Nigeria. Park set out from Portsmouth and sailed for 30 days before arriving at Jufre in present-day Gambia. From Jufre, he joined some British businessmen at a trading post in Pisania, also in the Gambia, where he prepared for the journey inland and learned Mandinka, the local lingua. Park eventually commenced his journey into the interior in December 1795, accompanied by 6 locals. He encountered many hardships along the way, but on the 21st of July 1796, he recorded in his diary that the locals of Segu, in present-day Mali, led him up to the river, which they called Joliba, meaning Great Water. He continued tracing the path of the Niger, but eventually he ran out of supplies and good health and decided that it was safer to turn back home. Mungo Park joined a party of African slavers who were heading to the slave market on the Gambian coast with their human cargo. From there, he sailed on a slave ship heading to America. However, the ship developed leaks and would have sunk, but it diverted to Antigua in the West Indies. After 10 days in Antigua, Park returned to England via a steamer, arriving on December 22nd, 1797, after 2 years and 7 months of travel. It is important to state that Park was not the only adventurer that the African Association sponsored into Africa at the time. They also sent a German explorer called Friedrich Conrad Hornemann to explore trade routes through the Sahara. His own objective was to get to Katsina from Cairo. This brings up the issue of Park's relationship with the Niger. When he returned to England, he was celebrated as the first European to discover the Niger. As I already stated, Park reported in his memoirs that he relied on African help to find the river. So, it is not that he went about claiming to be the one who discovered the Niger, but it became established that he was the first European to do so, and he was considered an expert on the subject matter. By discovery, we need to understand that the meaning intended was not only finding the source of the river, but also tracing its course in order to establish if it could be navigated by ocean-going vessels and thus become a conduit for trade with the interior of Africa. Although Park did not accomplish this task on the first voyage, he was approached by the British government to return to Africa and finish the job. And so, in January 1805, he set out on his second expedition. This time, he had the rank of captain and was accompanied by 46 Europeans, 35 of whom were soldiers. By December of that year, however, every member of the party, including Mungo Park, had perished. His diary entries recorded the death of so many due to sickness. When there were only 8 of them left, Park's party came under attack from a chief who felt slighted that they had entered his territory without paying tribute. 2 members of the party were killed in the attack, so Mungo Park and the other 5 jumped into the river and tried to swim to safety. Unfortunately, they perished in the rapids of the river. This happened in Busa, in present-day Kebbi state of Nigeria. It later transpired that Park had arranged to pay tribute to the chief, but he was double-crossed by the local he employed to do so, and this suggests that his death at the time might have been avoided. It would fall onto other Europeans to finish the task of tracing the path of the Niger through the interior of Africa. The story of Mungo Park and his exploits in Africa is the stuff of legends. From the stories shared so far, we can only begin to imagine why his adventures appealed to European audiences who were obsessed with learning about Africa. However, we have firmly established that Mungo Park neither discovered the Niger nor claimed to do so. But we have to ask, where did the narrative that he discovered the Niger come from? My hypothesis is that the Nigerian educational system is the source of the misinformation, although it may not have been deliberate. We must recognize that later in the 19th century, Nigeria became a colony of Britain, and amongst other things, we adopted the British curriculum in our educational system. So, Nigerian children were taught in school that Mungo Park discovered the Niger, much in the same way that British children would have been taught in their own schools. In other words, British heroes became our heroes, and British history became our history. For Africans, the story of Mungo Park underscores the importance of societies recording their history and making it accessible, as well as the role that education plays in creating historical consciousness about our communities and our identities. Even if we start from the premise that the British tried to misinform Africans about their own history, Africans are now in charge of their destinies, which makes it time to fix African history so that it meets local needs. Hope you enjoyed this piece of fabulous history. Please give it a thumbs up and share. Now, if there is a legend in Nigerian or African history you'd like to learn more about, let me know in the comments. Also, don't forget to subscribe so you always know when there's new content. Thanks for watching.